This is a video on how to find, edit, and complete activity 5.2a geometric constraints. So within your MyPLTW account, we're going to click on courses. And once you click on courses, you'll notice that in here you can see every PLTW course that I'm certified for. You have your student courses, which are Introduction to Engineering Design over here. And then you have your teacher guides over here on the left. So to find this, we're going to click on Teacher Guide. And when we click on Teacher Guide, you're going to notice we're in the Teacher Edition. And this is in Unit 5. So we're going to scroll down to Unit 5, Geometry of Design. And you click on Unit 5, Geometry of Design, it'll go over a basic overview of what each activity is. Once you scroll down to activity 5.1 here, you'll notice something that says Unit 5 Teacher Resources page. And when we click on that, that's going to pull us down to this little area over here for Unit 5 Teacher Resources. When we scroll down, there's some special resources just for teachers in here. You'll see your understandings, your knowledge and skills as we scroll through those essential questions to look at. Then you have a series of downloads here. The downloads that you'll want to use as an alternative assignment that helps you learn how to do geometric constraints in Inventor is activity 5.2a. Notice this is an IDW file. That stands for Inventor Drawing. So we are going to click on that. And you're going to notice that you've downloaded Inventor document 5.2a. And when we click on that, it will open up this drawing sheet for you. So I've already loaded this, but once you click on that, you should load Inventor, and this should load. You'll notice as I drag my mouse over this that the lines turn red. So when you see this directional arrow object, you can right click on it and go down to edit. That's when the lines turn red, you right click and you go to edit. And you'll notice that within this now we can actually go in and edit just individual lines. So you'll notice the whole entire sketch doesn't show up, just individual lines. We're going to use geometric constraints to solve this. You'll notice that there's a small direction for each one of these sketches. So for this object, it says make these two lines perpendicular. You'll notice that they're not perpendicular. We're going to come up and use the perpendicular constraint, which is this constraint right here. It looks like the letter T. If you leave your mouse on top of any icon within Inventor, you'll see a small window that'll show you a picture and a description of what the object does or what the icon does. It might also show you a video at times. We're going to click on perpendicular constraint, and you're going to click on that diagonal line and another diagonal line, and they are now perfectly perpendicular. We see the perpendicular constraint icon show up. I'm going to right click and say OK. All three of these lines should be parallel to one another. We will use the parallel constraint, which is right here. We click on parallel. We click on each of these diagonal lines, and they're now all parallel to each other. We now can see these show up. I'm going to right click and say OK. It says dimension number 3 to 2 inches. That's the first thing to do. Then fix circles 1 and 2 and make 3 tangent to 1 and 2. So circle 3 needs to be a diameter of 2. I click on dimension, I click on 3, I drag it out, and I hit the number 2, and I hit enter. I'm going to right click and say OK. You'll see this icon over there will show us that that is a diameter of 2. Fix circles 1 and 2. The fix command is this little padlock up here. We're going to click on fix, and we're going to click on circles 1 and click on circles 2. And you'll notice these little padlocks show up. They're now fixed. I'm going to uncheck my padlock. Right click and say OK, it'll go away. I'm going to go to the tangent symbol up here. It says, as we click tangent, make 3 tangent to 1 and 2. Tangent means to touch an arc or a circle at one point without going through it. We're going to click on this arc, click out here, and we now have tangency. We're going to click on our circle, click on the outside edge, and this is now tangent to both of them. Notice how it touches it, but it doesn't go through it. We see our tangent symbols, we right click and say OK, and we are done with that geometric constraint. Another tangent object to do is this circle. We're going to make the circle tangent to both lines. Tangent, circle, line, circle, line. And now they're both tangent. Hits it right at one point. Let's right click. Let's say OK. We're going to drag over, come down to this point. Fix point C. We're going to click on our padlock, and we're going to click on point C, and that is now fixed. Right click, say OK. Make endpoints A and B coincident with point C. Now this can be kind of confusing because you see these points over here that say A and a point over here that says B. We want just the endpoints of this line. So we're going to make them coincident. The coincident constraint looks like the letter L, and it's right up here. The coincident constraint means for 2 points to touch at the same point. Kind of like two people meeting in the same space is a coincidence. This is a coincident. We're going to click on the coincident constraint, endpoint here to C, endpoint here to C. They both meet. A and B are coincident with point C. We're just going to right click and say OK. That's all you have to do for that one. Make circles concentric. Concentric means for these circles to all share the same center point. Click on concentric. Your concentric command up here will show you the concentric circles and what everything lines look on. That's a before and an after picture. I'm going to click on each circle, and they will share the same center point. You see the concentric circles. We're going to right click, say OK. We're going to move on to the next one. Make lines collinear. That means these two lines will be on the same line, or the same like imaginary line. Collinear is right here between coincident and concentric. Click on collinear, click on this line, and click on that line. We can right click and say OK. You'll notice now when I drag those out, they stay on the same imaginary line. You can see them drag. Collinear is pretty neat. Make lines horizontal. Horizontal constraint is this line right here. You'll see a line that is horizontal. To the right of it is vertical. These two icons. Let's go to horizontal. Click on horizontal. Make sure you click on the line. A lot of times what happens is people will click on a dot. That's the midpoint of a line. We don't want to click on a dot. Click on the line. And both of these lines are now horizontal. We right click. We say OK. Let's come down to the bottom. Make lines vertical. Again, here's our vertical constraint. Real easy. Vertical. Line. 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 Right click. Say OK. Equilateral triangle. The equals constraint has this button right here. We're going to click on equal, click on each of the sides, and you'll have an equilateral triangle. That means that this is the same distance as this, which is the same distance as that. Right click, say OK. That is the equals constraint. Make the circles the same size. We can use the equals constraint for that as well. Equals. This will be the same size as this. You can see the equals constraint. It's a really easy thing to do. If I just dimensioned this by itself, a value, I could say equals, and it would force that to always be the same size. Line up the centers of the circles on the same horizontal plane. We'll use the horizontal constraint for this, because the horizontal plane is just really an imaginary plane we can't see. We click horizontal, center dot, lined up, center dot, center dot. I right click and say OK. These now will always line up together on the same horizontal axis. We have now completed the 5.2a geometric constraints assignment. I'm just going to say finish sketch, and you'll notice that we have completely and totally solved each one of these objects. You're supposed to take a look at this at the end for your Unit 2 weekly submission. This will give a good chance for you to get an idea of what geometric constraints are and how they are applied in Autodesk Inventor. Thanks.